Thank you very much. I'm extremely honored to be here. It is a matter of immense pleasure that this prestigious institution, G.H.G. Khalsa College of Education, has got ICSSR sponsored national seminar. That is very difficult to achieve, but they got this seminar, so it is a matter of immense pleasure. And I'm thankful to Honorable Principal Sir Dr. Bhagat Singh and whole management that they find me worthy to come here and talk something about this topic, that is the educational philosophy of Sardar Patel and how it influences modern India. I want to make it clear that actually this is not my domain especially, and much more knowledgeable persons than me are sitting here who belong to education field and various things. My forte is basically social and cultural history and specializing in cinematic studies. Still, if you have find me worthy to be here, I'm extremely thankful to you. When I got this invitation and I read the topic and the title, it made my head and brain spinning that I have to speak on something that is Sardar Patel's educational philosophy. And we all know that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel is Iron Man of India. He has done many more other things in the nation building process. But what he contributed as an educational philosophy, it made me think. It made me think really that we read about many other statesmen and leaders and freedom fighters who were directly involved with the educational schemes and educational philosophies. But was Sardar Patel also involved in making this educational philosophy worth, or he envisaged some dreams, or he devised some policy? When I started reading about him, then I found that directly he might not have envisaged any educational philosophy or any educational scheme or any educational policy, but his ideas about education was quietly embedded in what he was doing. And what he was doing was basically nation building. Nation building process was his main foot, and his educational philosophy and policies was embedded in that. Before coming to Siddharth Patel, I would like to uh, dwell upon this thing that education is something which enriches our mind as well as it helps us in living a worthy life. We cannot deny this fact. And reaching the mind is worthy objective of the education, but we have to live also. We have to earn our livelihoods also. So education is the way to have which enriches mind as well as living a worthy life, which includes earning capacity of a person. Now, earning capacity is not only criterion with which education or educational philosophy can be judged. Earning capacity of a person can be one factor, but it is not the only factor with which any educational philosophy can be linked. It has to be something higher. It has to be somewhere on that pedestal where other professions cannot reach. We all know स्टार्टिंग से ही बोला जाता है कि मेडिकल प्रोफेशन एंड टीचिंग इज दैट प्रोफेशन विच कम्स फ्रॉम योर हार्ट एंड योर पैशन विदाउट पैशन वी कैन नॉट टीच जिन्हें भी ऐसे ऊपर नो हो चाहिए बेसिकली सो इट रिप्रेजेंट्स कैरेक्टर and ethos of nationalism also, nation building process also. So past presidents should help in devising any policy. This is my opinion that if we see the past, I mean that in historical context, if we see our ancient India, then medieval India, then modern India, then what kind of education was there in ancient India? So we all know perhaps that there was a Gurukul system, but apart from Gurukul system, what is the basic limelight or what is the highlight of that education is that multidisciplinary approach, the words which we often hear today. That was there in ancient India. That was there in ancient India, there's no doubt about that. And when we progress from Aryan civilization further to Mauryans and Guptas and other empires come, and we enter the medieval era, or we can say the Muslim phase of rule in India, then the diversification takes place. Then we find something is diverted from the ancient Indian philosophy, as they had their own rules, their own things to implement, to, you can say, build nation in their own style. So that kind of educational philosophy was there. But again, multidisciplinary character remained. But again, multidisciplinary character remained. It was skill oriented in ancient India also, and somewhere in medieval India also. And when we come to modern India, in modern India, the students of education very well know, students of history also very well know, that when we come to study some educational policy of British in modern India, it is popularly known Macaulayan approach and Charles Wood's dispatch, which is basically instrumental in formulating and in devising the policy of education, which is more or less we see now. More or less we see now. Some cosmetic changes do take place, but I think they set an agenda. They set that frame tight work, frame compartment, Macaulayan approach and Charles Wood's dispatch that our education carried on along with those lines. And in between, we all know that our freedom movement was going on. We were fighting the British, we were fighting the colonial masters. And when the freedom fighters were fighting the colonial masters, they were not fighting only colonial dominance, they were fighting those ideas also which were harming India's cultural ethos, which were harming India's nation building process. They were fighting with that also simultaneously. Sardar Patel came, Pandit Nehru came, Mahatma Gandhi came, Lokmanya Tilak came, Gopal Krishna Gokhale came. Those were not fighting a political battle only, but they were fighting those ideals also which were harming Indian society and Indian cultural ethos. They were working simultaneously on those lines also. And apart from these persons, there were social thinkers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, you all know. They were doing the work of basically imparting, or you can say motivating the students, motivating others for social reforms, for religious social reforms, and for educational reforms. They were not into this political scenario. But the persons who were in political scenario, they were formulating that if we get independence, when we get independence, what kind of India we can make. So that's why, that was the reason that they were devising the policy, they were devising the framework simultaneously. Pandit Nehru's approach post-independence, we know that due to more international outlook, he was more on due basically that the higher educations should be world class. Okay, we all know that he was instrumental in having IIMs and IITs and AIMS. There's no doubt in that, because our first prime ministers, Jawaharlal Nehru's outlook was that basically. When we speak about Mahatma Gandhi, then we all know that he wrote many words. If we see the collected volumes of Mahatma Gandhi's work, it is very voluminous, and out of those, political ideology was, we can say, 50%, and he was speaking, he was writing on many other issues. And we all know the Vardha education scheme, the Vardha scheme of education, where he stressed upon vernacular system and all these things. So that is, we associate with the Mahatma Gandhi. Lokmanya Tilak also came, and we cannot forward, you can say, Sayyid Ahmad Khan. He was devising the policy of education only for the Muslim brethren because he found that they were somewhat backward. In this scenario, in this system, when all these things were going on, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who rose into prominence from Kheda movement and Bardoli movement in Gujarat. So he was also very well rooted in ground, very well rooted in the rural scenario. He was born in a village in Nadiad in 1875, 31st October, the day which we celebrate as National Integration Day today. So he was also very concerned that what kind of education we are going to impart to our students, what kind of education British are devising the policy, what kind of education they are giving, whether we have to change this or whether their system is good. Whenever I talk of British system of education, it is clear, it is quite clear that they formulated their policies because the policies benefited them. But there is no doubt that their policies benefited Indians also. Whether as a byproduct only, they were not basically concerned that Indians should benefit, but the policies were such that some Indians got benefit also. The Indians which wanted some Western education or to sit in the higher examination, that policy was beneficial to them. But when we come to Sardar Patel, now, again, I shift my focus to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. There's a core area that I find basically in Sardar Patel's philosophy or Sardar Patel's vision, not only in educational scenario, but as a whole, then his whole thinking, his whole philosophy, his whole policy, what I find, what I observe is based upon the cultural values and ethos of India. Now, we all know that there was Indian National Congress, which was fighting the struggle, which was in the freedom movement. And in the Indian National Congress only, there were many schools of thought. Students of history know this thing, that there were many schools of thought. If our first Prime Minister Pandit Nehru was considered to be somewhat leftist of the center, then Sardar Patel was thought of something rightist of the center. I would not say that he was totally rightist in his approach, but he was a bit rightist of the center. And when I use this term, a bit rightist of the center, that means that in his mind, nation comes first. Nation came first, not the international values, not the communist philosophy, not the communism, but those values, that philosophy which will benefit my country, which will benefit my nation, which we have lost somewhere, that was always in Sardar Patel's mind. So his educational philosophy, in my opinion, what I have observed, we cannot read separately. It has to be seen in the nation building process, along with the nation building process, because Sardar Patel was not an educationist as a profession basically, but when he was doing this work of national building process, then all policies go along. वो जो लहर है वो साथ साथ चलती रहती है, क्योंकि वो चीजें जो हैं वो उनको सेपरेट किया ही नहीं जा सकता, चाहे इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी की बात हो, चाहे एजुकेशनल पॉलिसी की बात हो, वो चीजें तो साथ साथ ही चलेंगी. तो सरदार पटेल का जो विजन नेशन बिल्डिंग प्रोसेस का था, उसी के अंदर ही हम उनके एजुकेशन के बारे में जो विचार हैं उनको स्टडी कर सकते हैं, उनसे सेपरेट नहीं हम कर सकते. सो नेशन बिल्डिंग प्रोसेस, हाउ वी कैन बिल्ड अ नेशन, हाउ नेशन कैन बी बिल्ड. When I say this term, nation building process, then it should come in our mind that somewhere along the line, our nation was lost. कि कहीं ना कहीं हमारा नेशन जो था, जो राष्ट्र था, वो कहीं खो चुका था. और राष्ट्र था क्या? राष्ट्र वो था जो ब्रिटिश के आने से पहले था. ये थिंकिंग जो है वो सरदार पटेल की, सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल की, बाकी उनके साथियों के साथ ये मिल रही थी. कई साथियों के साथ ऐसी थिंकिंग उनकी मिल रही थी. he never directly said go back to Vedas. That is the philosophy of Swami Dayanand. Directly उन्होंने नहीं कहा सरदार पटेल ने, but basically what he wanted is that our education has three focus mainly three focus. It should be based upon gender equality, with the girls' education and women education to be given more prominence, which was not being given in the medieval era. Somewhere it was lost, and in British era also, universities were set up, primary schools, vernacular education system was started, but girls were very less in the schools. So Sardar Patel's main emphasization was on girls' education, women education, the core thing. Second thing that I observed is that on the national level, he was fighting many battles. He was fighting for the farmers. He was fighting for the revenues. He was fighting for our India's freedom movement. So when he thought about this education, in practical sense, he restricted this to Gujarat area, that Charutar area, or we can say that Nandiad or Bardoli area, when he established Vitthal Kanna Vidyalaya in Nandiad. So he started that डोनेटेड प्लान ऑन अ डोनेटेड लैंड बेसिकली, तो नाम से जाहिर हो जाता है कि विठल कन्या विद्यालय. नाउ आई वोंट से दैट सरदार पटेल वाज द ओनली वन हु वाज थिंकिंग अबाउट गर्ल्स एंड वुमेन एजुकेशन. स्वामी दयानंद सरस्वती, स्वामी श्रद्धानंद, महात्मा हंसराज एंड डीएवी मूवमेंट वाज ऑल अबाउट दिस, दैट गर्ल एजुकेशन हैज टू बी गिवन prominence, but their area was mainly in North India, and Sardar Patel was working in the Western India, that is Gujarat. So he restricted his practical approach to that, not theory. Theory was this, that it has to be gender equality, but प्रैक्टिकली तो पूरे नेशन में वो काम नहीं किया जा सकता, क्योंकि बहुत सारे फ्रंट्स में वो काम कर रहे थे, तो वो अप्रोच उनकी वहां तक रही. तो सेकंड कोर, सेकंड क्रक्स, सेकंड फोकल पॉइंट दैट आई फाइंड इन एजुकेशन इज दैट ऑनरेबल Sanjay Kaushik sir has also stressed upon, is that the education has to be skill based. It has to be with practical approach. I do not mean to say that it totally has to be skill based and you must not study the subjects of history, geography, philosophy, and music. It was not that he meant. He meant that when we study these core subjects also, it should have some practical value, so that these subjects also help a person to earn and to gain moral values. When I say the moral values was the third focal point of his educational philosophy. Moral education, or say value education. Everybody stresses now on value education, moral education, and it is rightly so. What I feel is that it is rightly so that we stress upon this moral education and value education nowadays, because somewhere when we are imparting professional education or some general education also, the syllabi are devised in such a way that teacher gets engrossed in that syllabus only, and somewhere along the line, this important part of education gets missed. And when it gets missed, then we see that what kind of society we are forming. And we can say that this is modern world, this is modern India, और सब कुछ जायज है, वक्त के साथ बदल जाना चाहिए. मैं मानता हूं कि वक्त के साथ बदल जाना चाहिए, लेकिन वक्त के साथ मिटना किसी भी देश की और इंसान की निशानी नहीं है. बदलना हो सकती है, लेकिन कई बार मैं देखने में आता है मुझे कि मॉरल एजुकेशन के अभाव में, नैतिक मूल्यों के अभाव में, जो हमारी समाज, हमारी वैल्यूज हैं, इतनी ज्यादा खत्म हो चुकी हैं बेसिकली, कि हम बदल नहीं रहे हैं. बेसिकली बदलते बदलते कहीं मिट ही ना जाए. तो वो एक डर जो था, वो शायद 1930 के दशक में सरदार पटेल के माइंड में भी था. तभी उसी टाइम उन्होंने स्ट्रेस दे दिया था कि एजुकेशन शुड नॉट बी डिवाइड ऑफ वैल्यूज, एजुकेशन शुड नॉट बी डिवाइड ऑफ moral education, whether we are studying medical, whether we are studying engineering, or whether we are studying some general course, but we have to devise some plan, we have to devise some time frame, so that this moral education can be given to the students. This philosophy was very well there in Sardar Patel's mind also. And that doesn't mean that that education has to be embedded in religion only. He never said that that education has to be embedded in religion. Moral values, naturally, we get it from any religion, but apart from religion also we can tell the students what is right and what is wrong. So that is the main part. And if that is the main part, that was much there in the 1930s when Sardar Patel was talking on these lines. So his ideals, his education being not to be seen separately, I'm stressing on this point only basically. So his particular attention was towards women education. I gave the example of Vitthal Kanya Vidyalaya that he established in Gujarat. And further, as Honorable Sanjay sir emphasized, that Gujarat Vidyapeeth was established basically in 1920 during non-cooperation movement. And that was established basically by Mahatma Gandhi. But we all very well know that Mahatma Gandhi considered Sardar Patel and Jawaharlal Nehru his right and left hands. And now there is no doubt about that, basically, that whatever viewpoints historians make or whatever viewpoints we as a historians have, but if we observe and if we critically analyze history, Sardar Patel was equally dear to him as Pandit Nehru. The personalities were quite different. The personalities differ, but Mahatma Gandhi's disciples were both Sardar Patel and Pandit Nehru also. And Gujarat Vidyapeeth was also established. Mahatma Gandhi, he remained chancellor for that. And after Mahatma Gandhi, Sardar Patel became the chancellor. And in when I talked about this Vitthal Kanya Vidyalaya, that was also inaugurated by Mahatma Gandhi. So why I am stressing upon words Mahatma Gandhi? Because we cannot separate Mahatma Gandhi from Sardar Patel. We cannot separate. It is a separate issue that their viewpoints differ in the political approach somewhere. But when it came to building India, when it came to having social reforms, when it came to removing social evils from India, the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi and Sardar Patel more or less on the same frame. So that was how Sardar Patel was going on. During the process of nation building, he got very much impressed by this bureaucratic system and bureaucracy, ICS, Indian Civil Services, that we all know that was established by the British. And the thing that Sardar Patel saw, basically, that it was not British that was keeping India alive here, that was keeping India going. It was bureaucracy that was keeping India going. So that had to be steel frame. So he wanted this to be steel frame, and he told others that this is the real steel frame. And in 1947, he addressed the bureaucrats also, young bureaucrats also there. So that is also his legacy. Indian civil services, making of Indian civil services, implementing those values, we can say that was British fort. But keeping that alive, keeping that system alive is one of the legacy of Sardar Patel. Holistic education. We always hear these words. Holistic education. That is very much right. Nowadays, we do not say the term education only. It has to be holistic education. Government of India is stressing upon holistic education. Now, what is basically holistic education? So, in my opinion, if I say in a very simple words, the education which is not only based upon syllabus or reading your syllabus, but apart from that, if we are getting some knowledge, if we are of some value to society, if we are giving something to society, if we are something getting from society, if we are building a personality, if we are building a character, if we are helping the government in nation building, that education is holistic education. So that was also one of the core points of Sardar Patel's educational vision. I will say educational vision because he never said that he is propounding some educational philosophy. This was his vision that education has to be holistic, it has to groom overall personality, and it included spiritual education, but that spiritual education has to be linked with Indian ethos, ethos which are totally Indian. The core values have to be Indian. Nowadays, we also hear this term Indian knowledge system. The Indian knowledge system has become very popular, and I have seen the many seminars being organized on this Indian knowledge system. Now, what is this Indian knowledge system? So students, are we getting this education when we are getting being educated as per syllabus devised by our universities? Is this not Indian knowledge system? Is this not Indian knowledge system? I'm afraid I'll say that government of India is basically stressing upon the thing that the system which we had devised in ancient India, that is the Indian knowledge system. When we talk about the scientific progress, in our books, or in our formulas, when we study those formulas, when we study those books, often we study about the Western scientists. Often we study about the Western thinkers. But the nowadays stress is upon Aryabhat. Stress is nowadays upon Bhaskaracharya. Stress is nowadays upon to study the system of Charak, which was very well there in our Indian knowledge system. So that has to be embedded in our modern education system. And this was also Sardar Patel's thinking about education. Cultural ethos, Indian cultural ethos, which could develop the mind, which could develop body and soul, not just cognitive abilities, but also physical, social, cultural, moral, and spiritual dimensions. Now, one can question me, one can raise a question in our minds that how it is possible in today's world where jobs are not there, where the thing is to get a job after getting the education, after getting education in that particular field which help in getting a decent job. Nowadays, what happens is that students more or less are not seeing that for what they are meant for. What is their acumen? What is their interest? What they see, students have become very smart, or I can say that their parents have become very smart. They see that what kind of job, beta, you can get after 5 years of doing this course. Whether you can get a job, then do this course. And if you cannot get this job, we don't care about what is your acumen, what is your mindset. Okay, I also agree that we have to get the jobs. I said earlier also that it has to be linked with the earning capacity, but only earning capacity that gets wrong somewhere along the line. So that was also Sardar Patel's value basically. When he was in Ahmedabad Municipal Committee, then also Sardar Patel devised a policy specifically for Ahmedabad area that what kind of education that has to be given there. So, not speaking much, as much more knowledgeable than me, esteemed guests are sitting here, I would say in the last, we get the Rabindranath Tagore's ideas about education very clearly. As Shanti Niketan and Vishwabharati, we know, we all know that Mahatma Gandhi's educational philosophy, Varda scheme, is very popular. We all know that Pandit Nehru was very keen in establishing these IIMs, IITs, and AIMS, as his mindset was that international outlook. But we should not forget Sardar Patel amidst all these things, all these luminaries. Why we should not forget? I agree that there is not any Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel educational formula, but there is Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's formula for nation building process, and his education policy has to be seen in that context only. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing with us the vision of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel on educational system of India in very simple and clear words. Thank you, sir.